Welcome to the 9 Sports Podcast, Women's Basketball Edition. I'm Jackie Powell.
And I'm Howard Megdal.
And we are your hosts on this journey, and we are going to be bringing you high-level women's basketball analysis, news, and some nuanced level thinking, or maybe as Howard likes to say, some gray area type thinking. Neither of us are wearing gray today. But anyway, on today's show, we are going to provide a whole host of emotions and thoughts and feelings. We're going to begin with excitement as we break down some recent reporting from someone named Howard Megdal. Do you all know who that is?
I have to look him up.
And then we're going to have another special guest in Michelle Smith joining the show to discuss your next read, which is her new book. Yeah. And then finally, we're going to end today's show with some bittersweetness as we discuss 2 stories that we don't want to go untold. Mm-hmm. So first, let's start newsy. Howard, it is your turn to do number 1 at the 9 today. So we have to put you on the clock. Here we go. And go.
The WNBPA on Sunday had 2 pieces of news, and one of them got a little buried. The news, and this came from the league, that there will be revenue sharing payments of $8 million under the terms of the old CBA. That matters because the players are going to have access to that money in 2026 as they continue to negotiate. But a really big deal, something that Katie Barnes reported over at ESPN, I've been able to dig into, $9.25 million coming to them from a collection of image rights, trading cards, and other areas collected through paid in June. That means more than $17 million that they're sitting on. We're going to talk about how and why that matters.
Oh man, that was incredible. That was right at the shot clock ending right
we
there.
We got to get that buzzer, or I'm telling you, like the Price is Right. Dun, 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 dun. Wow. Like I wonder, do they have rights to it? Like, did I just violate copyright by saying that? I don't know, but I really want
horn.
I want that horn. I didn't win the Showcase Showdown horn. So anyway, we'll look into it.
We will. So, Howard, thank you for that. That was incredibly newsy. Obviously, what we're referencing here is the latest Basketball Insider column at the 9 Sports, which you can read right now. And we are going to obviously put that in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And so let's really dive into this because there is so much to unpack in those 60 seconds that you just shared with us. So I think, Howard, if you could just take us through how your wheels got turning here and what told you, oh, wait, there's something hidden here.
Well, it was really interesting. So kudos to Katie Barnes for their reporting. And I see this paragraph, and my first thought was, that's a lot of money. My second thought was, why did that money not get paid out over this 6-year period? And then that initial feeling was reinforced by, like, my phone started blowing up from players, from agents, from people around the league. We're like, hey, what is this? What's going on here? And so I have had so many conversations and been able to dig into documents. We were able to access LM2s, which are essentially union filings to the government every single year about assets, liabilities, everything that's going into it. And the number one takeaway and the biggest thing is, as people have wondered, all right, we understand that the league doesn't necessarily have the urgency for the next paycheck because the league is made up of owners who are incredibly well capitalized. Why are the players responding in kind and seeming to be okay with putting more pressure on the negotiations. And Unrivaled is part of the answer to that, and Athletes Unlimited is part of the answer to that, and Overseas is part of the answer to that. But a critical part here, and one that we now understand for the first time, is the WNBPA has set itself up to not only have this cash reserve system in place, but something that can be a cash reserve system going forward. So understand they have an agreement with One Team Partners, where One Team Partners handles licensing for them. So when you see, for instance, Nafisa Collier on a Panini trading card, it's through a deal that One Team Partners has brokered with Panini on behalf of the WNBPA. Incidentally, and as a side note, they are not the only group working with One Team Partners. Numerous other sports league unions, NWSLPA, the U.S. Women's National Team in soccer, their PA, Major League Baseball PA, which we'll get into a little bit later, NFL, they all work with One Team Partners. Unrivaled has a deal with One Team Partners as well for trading cards. And so I say all that to say there's a lot of different unions working here together, but the WNBPA, by virtue of the way they've structured this, has put themselves in a safer position. This decision, I understood from the PA, was made back in 2020. And that seems strange to a lot of people at first, right? This idea, why the year it was signed, the last CBA, were they putting together what amounts to a strike fund? But I spoke to numerous other senior officials in different unions, and this is a not uncommon thing. You don't know what the rainy day is. Maybe the rainy day will be, God forbid, COVID-19, as it turned out to be. And some unions were better able to handle that than others in 2020 because of rainy day funds that had been put together. It is my understanding that one union had been doing this for 20 years from Image and other deals that the PA had been making. So 6 years is not all that crazy. In fact, just the opposite. It was incredibly smart because of where it ended up landing the WNBPA today.
So speaking of that, I think it's important that we explain some of these many parts that you just explained.
Yeah, sure.
So you noted that you took a look at some government filings, which that's what this LM2 is. So for the listeners and I guess viewers, I gathered some of those forms to be able to show you all what we're talking about. And so we have some documents from 2024 and then 2025. So first, I'm going to pull this up. So this is the WNBPA's 2024 government filing. So Howard, if you can just sort of explain like what we're seeing here, and then I'm going to zoom in on an important number that you reported on.
Again, note, these are distributions that are done effectively quarterly, right? But the sum total of what was coming in was obviously not nothing, but a relatively small amount. The total of all transactions there, just north of $700,000.
Yep. You see that right there. I've zoomed in. I highlighted it in yellow.
Part of the nest egg. But 1 year is part of the nest egg, right?
So now we're going to obviously take a look at those 2025 numbers, right? So it's the same form you see here on the left side of it, One Team Partners LLC. That is the group that the PA has been working with. And let's zoom in on that number now.
If you would like a number that helps illustrate the growth of the sport, certainly there are many people, and this is not inaccurate, who would point out this is the move from Caitlin Clark going to college to Caitlin Clark being in the WNBA. This is also obviously a time that we saw numerous other areas of growth, from television, from other stars coming into the league, Angel Reese being a prime example of this. You see that number jump significantly. That's a factor of 5.
Yes, there we go. Over $3 million, if you can see that.
Over 3.5 million.
Yes, yes. And so to put that into more context, essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at, I believe, if we want to take a look at this fancy graph that we have, so we are taking a look here at an over 400% increase from 2024 to 2025.
Seems good. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, we've talked a whole lot about this idea of how big of a moment 2024 was for women's basketball. And I think this is something, these are numbers that directly show them. It's a symbol. And so that's why, so this is a portion of this war chest.
But can we talk about that for a second? Because this is a portion of the war chest that does not go through the WNBA. This is a portion of the war chest that goes directly from sponsorship dollars to the WNBPA. And the reason why that matters is significant going forward. And we're at a moment in which public sentiment is very much on the side of the players. The comparison I made to what this could be in the event of a work stoppage is similar to war bonds in World War I and World War II, where players are able to say, listen, if you want to support us as we are navigating this work stoppage, go ahead and purchase basketball cards of us instead of the tickets for a league that's not currently operating. This is a way for people to directly to support the players as this continues going forward.
And it's interesting because I feel like when I pay attention to the PA social media channels, I'm seeing them posting, I guess, links, I think, to some of these cards in addition to PA licensed merch. And so all of that is going into this portion of the war chest that Howard just explained.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's, again, you're probably thinking, okay, how did we get to the 17 million, right? So let's put some of this into context here. So on this slide, we take the approximate amount of 2025 player salaries. So the 1.5 million, that is the salary cap, you multiply that by 13 and you get, you know, over 19.5 million, right? So let's do some math. I know it can be fun sometimes. I think, Howard, in this situation, it can be a little bit more fun than not, right?
Well, it's how you get the clicks. Everyone says this. It's in our attention-based economy that we go in depth on math. That's how you massively go viral. That's what I've read.
So here we go. We're going to add up 9.25 million here. So Howard, tell the listeners or remind the listeners what this represents here.
Of the licensing revenue to the WNBPA, primarily through One Team Partners, dating back to 2020.
Mm-hmm. So for those of you who remember going to school with a smart board, that's what this is reminding me of. So here's our licensing money right here. And we're going to add that to the 8 million. So Howard, if you can explain or remind the listeners again what this 8 million right here represents.
That is the revenue sharing payment from the league. The last CBA, contrary to some popular opinion, had revenue sharing. You need to reach revenue targets to get there. The WNBA did in 2025. Owes the players $8 million as a result, and it is going to them.
Mm-hmm. So You add those two numbers together, and you're going to get a number that is greater than, wait for it, 17 million.
Now, let's talk about that while you finish writing this out, which is to say, look at the comparison. Effectively, the players are sitting on the equivalent of roughly what they earned in salary in 2025. That is really significant. That is before $1 comes in 2026. Now, again, there are a million reasons why a deal needs to get done to keep this not just continuing, but increasing. But while the two sides are negotiating this, the players are sitting on this money in a way that you generally do not see, and you certainly haven't seen in the WNBA in the past. As I pointed out at the end of my piece, we know from their LM2 back in 2019, when they were in the final stages of negotiating the last CBA, cash on hand for the WNBPA was $673,906. That is not a strike fund. This is a strike fund.
Essentially, let's see how far we've come. That's what this fund proves.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so, Howard, before we move to our next segment, where we will be joined by the one and only Michelle Smith,
Hall of Famer Michelle Smith.
I think it's important to provide some context about the licensing partner, One Team, and how maybe this could be an issue, but it also might not.
Something to watch for is that there is a current investigation from the FBI concerning MLBPA's relationship with One Team partners. Now, One Team provided a statement to the Nine Sports pointing out accurately that they have never been a target of this investigation. But it's complicated. MLBPA was one of the founding partners who made up One Team. MLBPA made that decision with Tony Clark at the helm. Tony Clark has now resigned. There are all manner of things that have nothing to do with One Team partners having been found criminally liable that could be problematic. And I say that to say, whatever the fortunes of One Team partners are, there's a number of areas that could be affected by it, including the WNBPA, which is getting, as we've pointed out, some really vital funding right now from their relationship with One Team partners. This is not to say there is any wrongdoing, and certainly not, and I spoke to 4 sources who reinforced this, that there is no reason to believe there's any issue between the WNBPA and One Team that is even under investigation. However, if that goes away, then it's up to the WNBPA to figure out how you plug that hole. It's doable. And again, it's not a problem for today. It's a problem for potentially tomorrow, but it's something that bears really close watching because, again, look how important this relationship has been for where the WNBPA is right now. So just more like put a pin in it, keep an eye on it. I know I will.
Same here. Well, so folks, all of this reporting comes from this column here, just showing you all what it is and where you can find it. Again, it will be attached in the show notes, but it's time for us to get into segment 2, which is we're talking to the Hall of Famer, Michelle Smith.
Welcome back to the 9 Sports Podcast Women's Basketball Edition. I'm Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
And we are delighted to be joined by Michelle Smith, my friend who has done everything there is to do in this business and has written a seminal book called Life's Work about Tara VanDerveer. We're going to talk to her all about this book out this week. And again, as a reminder, you can buy it. You should buy it. And if you buy it with our special discount code, Direct from Triumph, you can save 20%. I'll give you more of that information. And of course, it'll be in our show notes as well. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hello, friends. It's super exciting to be here. It's time to talk about life's work. which is, by way, catch the double meaning, because obviously women's basketball has been my life's work. So
That's right.
yes, there you go.
So that's a really good segue, Michelle, and we're so happy to have you here. Why writing life's work, and how did this idea come to you?
Well, it should have come to me on its own. I'll acknowledge that. But about, and I always say it was like 8 years ago, but I think that was when I started this project. So we're going to say about 10 years ago. Tara called after the season was over and said, hey, let's go grab some dinner. So I made my way to Palo Alto, and we sat in a nice little restaurant, and she said, I'd like to talk to you about doing a book about the program. And I said, that's awesome. I would love that. And I said, what do you want this book to be about? Like, what do you vision for this book? And she literally said, well, our men's program has one and we're better than them. So that was her hook. And I said, well, you're true. You're right. And I'll have to think on that. But it took a long time for, like life happens, right? Like things happen and you just have to find space. And at that point, I had pivoted away from full-time women's basketball coverage and was working in education communications. And it was finding space. And so when I found space, interestingly, it really was the end of the Pac-12 that sort of said, now I have to do this, right? Like now I have to tell this story about Stanford, and by extension, the story of the Pac-12, and obviously the story of Tara, because, as it hit a lot of people really hard, it hit me really hard too. This was the league that I have covered for 3 decades and more, and, did some work directly for them and had, deep relationships with the coaches in this league. And so to lose the Pac-12 felt like the moment for me, or the impetus to say, I'm doing this. So that's where we are.
Wow. No, I really appreciate hearing that story, and it cracks me up that her reason was, well, the men's team has a book and we're better than them.
Correct. on every count.
So I think my next question is, I want to know who you believe this book is for. And obviously, the easy answer to that is you want it to be for everyone. Sure. You want everyone to read this. But when you think about who you want to be impacted by this, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think you can trace Tara and Stanford to so much of the place that we're at with women's basketball right now. And so I want people who love women's basketball to read about this Mount Rushmore figure in the game, and to, understand this program out on the West Coast that they probably didn't see a lot on TV until March, that they knew was always really good, that, in the big picture, let's be honest, Tara has 3 national championships and Pat and Gino have many, many more. But I believe that Tara is as impactful in the women's game in different ways. But I want people who love women's basketball and who love women's leadership. Let's just say that. So let's expand that audience. Like, this is a story about women's leadership, and it starts with Tara, and then it runs all the way through this program to her players and to the players who become coaches. And so this is a story for me about women's leadership. It's a story about legacy, and it's a story about the roots of the women's game that have, that reach all the way to where we are today.
That's fascinating. And the first thing that comes to my mind is thinking about, when you say women's leadership, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is women in coaching. And there's been a lot of discussion about, is women's basketball coaching, is it as diverse and is it as full of women as maybe it should be? And those are questions that we continue to grapple with in the year of 2026. So what would you say maybe surprised you while working on this? I mean, you've covered Tara and this program for how many years?
30 years and pretty intensively. When I was at the San Francisco Chronicle, we were traveling with them at a time when newspapers were clearly much healthier than they were, but not many folks outside of Knoxville and Stores were sending folks on a full-time beat with the women's basketball team. And so I really had that opportunity to be with them all the time through the seasons, through the beginnings and ends of seasons. So it's, my lens on this for Tara's leadership in particular is, we want to say you have to see it to be it. And Tara didn't see it. Tara just had to figure out how to be it. Like, this is a story of pre-Title IX women's basketball. This is a story of someone who had a passion for the game and was trying to figure out in a very limited opportunity era how to make something of that, how to make a career of that. And then, so Tara has always not needed to see it to be it when it comes to innovating in the game, when it comes to trying new things, when it comes to, it's instilling a sense of leadership in her players. Like, she's never needed the role model. She's always been the role model.
Yeah. I think that's a great point because, again, when you're talking about Tara as a role model, I think what I also want our listeners to understand, especially some of the new women's basketball fans, we want them to understand who Tara was and how her presence and how her philosophies have, been sprinkled into the present. So how do you see shades of Tara in women's basketball, not just in college, maybe in the W2 in 2026?
So I would start with the early days of her coaching career. I mean, the nickname Video VanDerveer, right? The amount of time she spent watching breaking apart videos, that is just standard practice now. All of the things that coaches have now, all the technologies that lend to all of the time that they spend breaking down videos, while Tara was in a room splicing together, get video reels and things, right? To get coaching things to share with her teams. She was one of the first coaches, I think, that was really in video and trying to use video to help her teams with scout, to help her teams see their opportunity for their own improvement. She was one of the first coaches to embrace the 3-point line. And so I'm not saying the game doesn't get there without Tara, but Tara's first. Tara had that team shooting threes when other coaches were telling teams, you're not allowed to shoot threes. Like, the threes became legal and other coaches were not embracing it. And Tara had Jennifer Azzi and Katie Stedding and players like that. And we're talking late 80s, right? Out there shooting buckets and buckets of threes to build offenses around the 3-point shot. It's about her involvement. The moment that burst the WNBA, the 96 Olympic team, is, Tara takes that team, she leaves her program for a year, which was unheard of in the college game, of being asked to make that commitment. So they put together this team and the expectations were massive. Like, nobody else, every USA team coach faces massive expectations because we're Team USA. But those games on American soil and what was waiting for all those players on the other side, which was a sustainable professional league, is made possible because Tara put that team together in a way that ensured that they would win and have the kind of success that gets attention in the mainstream and puts them in a position to launch the league. So when you talk about the biggest things in this game, right, the way that coaches operate today and things, there's all a through line back to Tara and the way that she did business and the way that she wanted to be a coach. And then there's an entire chapter about the leaders that this program has spawned. I mean, we could go off the top of our head really quickly, right? Like, the WNBA, the first WNBA Players Association president was Sonia Henning, who went to Stanford. The current WNBA president is Neko Gumake, who has taken this league into absolutely uncharted territory. You know, the NBA has people like Amy Brooks, and Amy Brooks was Amy Westerfeld when I covered her, and she played at Stanford and was a role player off the bench, by the way, not a star, but a role player off the bench. You've got, you know, Bethany Donovan. Bethany Donovan was a Stanford player, and she's, you know, an executive in the WNBA. Her current position is, help me, I know things change, titles change, but, you know, Bethany Donovan is one of, you know, it's like the number two, I think the number 2 person in the WNBA behind
a
Kathy.
senior executive with the WNBA.
A senior executive with the WNBA. And then there's, you know, the litter of, you know, coaches, general managers, and take it outside of basketball. You know, the book tells a story of Kate Starbird, who was the National Player of the Year in 1997. And Kate is one of the world's foremost experts on misinformation at the University of Washington. And Kate has testified in front of Congress. Kate has been doxxed. Kate has been in this age where misinformation is a goal, not, you know, where like Kate is one of the world's foremost experts in misinformation. And like, this is the kind of like leadership. And Jane Appel says in the book, Tara didn't come to practice every day and say, be a leader. She just fostered the atmosphere that made it possible for us to leave the world and do that. I mean, Chiney's role at ESPN was groundbreaking, right? Like it, and, you know, and Jane Appel works for the Players Association. And that doesn't even include the coaches, right? That doesn't include the people who have gone on from that program to move into the coaching ranks. And so there's just this atmosphere there, and this atmosphere under Tara that demanded that you be your best.
It's so important. It is book length in terms of scope, and it is told, if you'll forgive me for saying so about my friend, by the only person who should have been telling this story, Michelle Smith. The book is Life's Work: How Tara VanDerveer and Stanford Women's Basketball Changed the Sport Forever. Make sure you click on that link. Use code IXLife'sWork to get 20% off the book direct from Triumph. Make sure you read the excerpt over at the 9 Sports as well to give you a sense of it. But Michelle, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for having me. It was such a joy to write, and it's such a joy to be with my friends here.
Back after this, talking about court vision. Howard Megdal here, the 9 Sports Podcast, Women's Basketball Edition with
Jackie Powell. And for our final segment today, or what we call court vision, which it's a forward-thinking segment, but then other times it's more things we want you all to think about. This week, it's more of the latter. And so Howard and I have 2 stories to share with you before we go about 2 people that have been on our mind this week. So Howard, who has been on your mind?
Jeff Jasper's been on my mind. And if that's not a name you know, it's a name you should. More than 1,100 victories in high school girls basketball here in the state of New Jersey. But he would be the first to tell you it's not about the victories. He has been the head coach at Pascack Valley High School for 53 years. There has not been another girls basketball head coach in the history of the program. He has impacted the lives of thousands of young women. You look across the rosters in North Jersey, and the coaches are overwhelmingly people who played for Jasper or have endless Jasper stories about the ways in which he stepped up to help them. This is personal for me. I got to know him during the time I lived in North Jersey. He went out of his way to be welcoming to our family. He is somebody who to this day asks about my children and wants to help in any way he can with their lives, with their progress, with their development. And I say it because this is an original Title IX pioneer. This is somebody who was able to successfully sue the school district under Title IX in the 1970s to make sure the girls' basketball team was treated equally. Yeah, there are championships, there are county titles. There's so much that go into this, but it is about the impact of a life. Jasper announced that he's retiring at the end of this year. He's playing a game this afternoon. I wish I could be there to see it. It could be his last game. His last game is coming, but the impact that he has had is going to be felt for generations to come.
Well, that's a lovely story. And there's a reason why we tell these stories, so that the people that do incredible work, their names live on. And so someone on my mind this week was someone that I didn't really know about until this week. And that was Tara Braxton, who passed away in a car accident. And she was drafted number 7 overall in the 2005 WNBA draft by the Detroit Shock. And she was a 2-time champion. I think she was named to the WNBA All-Rookie team. And so what really struck me was seeing how people were talking about this, how this story was being covered. The fact that I was really educated about who she was via a current or a group of players. Some are current, some are recently retired. I mean, on Instagram, Tina Charles was absolutely devastated by this. You had players who've recently retired in Kia Vaughn. Sue Bird went on her podcast, A Touch More with Megan Rapinoe, and told a story about Braxton and a funny inside joke that they shared together. There were Instagram stories from Epiphany Prince, who recently retired. DeWanna Bonner has a photo of the two of them in their Phoenix Mercury jerseys because Braxton also played on the Mercury. The Pistons postponed their 20th anniversary celebration for the 2006 WNBA champion, the Detroit Shock. And that was scheduled for March 7th, but it's been postponed because of her passing. So this was someone that maybe could have been in a front office role in what will be the new Detroit WNBA expansion team. So it's really sad that someone who was really quite young passes away, and this new generation of women's basketball fans don't really know who she is.
And that's the essence of the work, right? I'm glad, and obviously saw on social media players who were with her, but being able to document these stories as they happen and being able to tell the history as well, it's the thing that gets me out of bed every day. But making sure that we know who are these people making an impact in this world is something that is, if I could pick one, the animating principle behind everything we do with the 9 sports. And so we will work tirelessly to continue doing that for all of you in the years to come. And thank you for being part of that journey with us. That's all what we have for this week at the 9 Sports Podcast, Women's Basketball Edition. We will, of course, be with you next week. So until then, I'm Howard Megdal.
I'm Jackie Powell.
Wishing all of you a wonderful weekend.